should not be surprised. Let me take this to Professor Swaran Singh. Professor Swaran Singh, in the middle of all this, talk about getting caught in the crossfire, and that's what the people of Lebanon are. 2,000 people killed, 160 of them children. Lebanon is not even at the top of the list when you discuss this subject. It's always about Iran, US, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, other countries. Quietly, Lebanon, a strife-torn place either way, because of economic hardships and other political instability. Quietly, Lebanon is dying. Swaran Singh.
That's true, Krishna. This entire global focus on Iran has removed either Gaza or Lebanon or even Ukraine from our media discussions or headlines. And meanwhile, Israel has followed a scorched earth strategy in that sense. In a much shorter time, killing almost 1,400 people in particularly southern Lebanon, which is a very limited geographical area, compared to 42 days leading to roughly about 2,000 plus deaths in case of Iran, which is a much larger country in that sense. So it's been a very focused, scorched earth strategy that Israel has followed in this southern Lebanon. But let's also remember that Hezbollah came into being in 1982, if I'm right. So for 44 years, Israel has constantly been fighting Hezbollah off and on. I remember about 4 actual wars with troops on the ground in southern Lebanon, and I think a dozen times flying rockets hitting various destinations. But Israel till date is not sure if the challenge from Hezbollah is over right now. So we don't know whether this kind of coercion, violence, is it going to lead to some stable peace, or is it going to reinforce the determination on part of people who constitute Hezbollah, and by extension determination that let's say Iran will have in terms of supporting what Iranians call the forces of resistance. As far as this scorched earth strategy is concerned right now, 2 things. One, first of all, because the global focus was on Iran, and therefore, Israel was kind of feeling comfortable doing things without coming into notice. But now, once the talks between Lebanon and Israel are, scheduled for next week, that creates its own pressures. So Israel is trying to go to Washington, D.C. with a position of strength by having completely altered the buffer zones, and therefore trying to then seek some kind of legitimization or reinforcement of the new geographical reality of the new buffer. And that again puts a certain target and pressure on Israel to, destroy what it thinks are threats to Israel's security with much rapid pace in that sense. What is significant is to underline here, as you mentioned, the world is not focusing as much on what is happening in southern Lebanon. Should that kind of strategy be allowed? Has it been peace productive at all ever, even in case of Israel? And as far as the talks in Islamabad are concerned, I think I am slightly at variance with my 2 very esteemed co-panelists. I would not call it a failure until the missiles start flying again across each other's, hitting and destroying each other. What we notice here is that perhaps our expectations were too high. I, for one, never expected things to be resolved in just one proxy talks. It's not even direct talks. Initially, much of the 21 hours of conversation were messages being crossed from one to another. Only 2 hours they were able to meet. I'm sure mostly those were courtesy conversations. Hard issues may not have been tackled. Though media also says they were in between losing tempers even in those short courtesy conversations of 2 hours. So I think it depends on what were our expectations. I think the ball is set rolling, and now we know that Russia, President Putin is already expressing likelihood of either Moscow or Leningrad, St. Petersburg could be the potential next destination for another meeting at a much lower level. Iran has already indicated conversations will continue among technical experts, as Iran has said. So I would wait a little more, and I think this ceasefire was bound to be very fragile. General would vouch me, all ceasefires in history have been fragile and violated again and again. Look at what is happening in Gaza after ceasefire from October. More than 1,000 people have died even after that. So, we were anticipating this to be chaotic situation even after ceasefire, because parties to conflict also should include Israel, should include Hezbollah, should include maybe Arab states. They are not part of ceasefire, which is hurriedly brought together virtually by social media and only for 2 weeks' time. So the first conversation for 21 hours, I think, to me, is a first step, and hopefully follow-up things would happen. Blockade is a very, very dangerous step forward if President Trump is announcing that naval blockade. But that's again not as yet talking of hitting any targets, but only blocking Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
Let's see how tensions move forward in coming times.
But Major Rajan